Welcome, weary traveller. Settle in, pull your blanket a little closer, sink just a little deeper into that pillow, and let your body go heavy and still. Because tonight we're going somewhere extraordinary, somewhere wild and vast and achingly beautiful, somewhere that will make you feel, with every single fibre of your being, profoundly and specifically grateful for the mattress beneath you. Tonight, we are heading west. Now, before you get too excited, and we use the word excited loosely, because this is a sleep story and excitement is somewhat against the point, we should be clear about what heading west actually meant in the mid-1800s. It did not mean booking a seat on something with wings. It did not mean a road trip with snacks and a curated playlist and a phone telling you to turn left in 400 feet. It meant packing your entire life into a wooden box slightly smaller than a modern bathroom, attaching that box to 4 large and philosophically independent animals, and then walking beside the box for 6 months across a continent, through weather that had absolutely no awareness of your existence and no interest in acquiring any. America in the 1840s is young, restless, and completely convinced that something magnificent is waiting just beyond the horizon. The newspapers are full of breathless promises: land, freedom, opportunity, a fresh start for anyone brave enough, or perhaps optimistic enough, which is a different thing, to pack everything they own into a wooden box on wheels and point it toward the setting sun. 2,170 miles of prairie, desert, river and mountain stand between the jumping-off towns of Missouri and the promised valleys of Oregon and California. There are no roads, no rest stops, no establishments of any kind offering coffee and a clean bathroom at reasonable intervals. There is only the trail, twin ruts carved into the earth by thousands of wagon wheels before yours, stretching west like a long, pale suggestion that this might, in fact, be possible. And somewhere along that trail there is a family a great deal like yours, tired, hopeful, carrying more than they intended to and less than they wished, moving forward because there is nothing behind them now, and because forward is the only direction this particular story knows. So close your eyes, let your shoulders drop, let your jaw unclench, let your hands go soft and open, and let the story carry you west. It begins, as so many great adventures do, with a rumour. It is the spring of 1848, and you're sitting in a farmhouse in Missouri. Outside, the land is familiar, in the particular way that familiar land can become, over time, a kind of gentle oppression. Every fence post exactly where it has always been. Every neighbour doing exactly what they have always done, in the same order, at the same time, with the same results. The fields turning the same colour in autumn that they have turned every autumn since before you were born. The soil is tired, the crops are modest, the winters are long and grey and patient, and somewhere in the back of your mind, quietly and persistently, like water finding its way through stone, there is the feeling that this cannot be all there is, that the world is larger than this particular view of it, that somewhere on the other side of that horizon you have been looking at your entire life. Something is waiting. Then a man comes through town. He has just returned from the west. He is lean and sun-darkened, and his eyes have a particular quality, the quality of someone who has seen something vast and does not quite know what to do with the size of it. He sits in the general store and he talks about Oregon, about valleys so green and fertile that the soil practically reaches up and grabs the seeds before you can even let go of them, about rivers so thick with salmon that the fish appear to be queuing, about forests so ancient and enormous that walking through them feels like walking through a cathedral that God built and then quietly forgot about. And then he says the words that will change everything for your family. The land is free. The government is offering 640 acres to any family willing to make the journey and settle the territory. 640 acres. To put that in perspective, in Missouri, a hard-working family might spend years saving enough to buy 50. In Oregon, the price of entry is simply the willingness to get there. Which sounds simple. It is not simple. It is not simple. The distance alone, 2,170 miles, is the kind of number that sounds abstract until you start walking it. 2,000 miles on foot beside a wagon, in boots that will wear through before you're halfway there. 6 months of weather, of rivers, of mountains, of a diet that will make you feel things about bacon that you never expected to feel. 6 months of sleeping on the ground and waking at 4 in the morning and doing it all again the next day and the day after that, with no days off and no option to reconsider and no way back once the distance behind you grows too large to contemplate returning across. But that is the view from here, from the end of the story. From your Missouri kitchen table in the spring of 1848, it looks different. From here, it looks like possibility, and possibility in the right light at the right moment can make almost anything seem worth attempting. You go home, you tell your wife, you sit at the kitchen table and spread out a piece of paper and begin to write numbers. She does not sleep that night, neither do you. The guidebooks, and there are several, competing vigorously for the attention of westward-bound emigrants, each one more optimistic than the last, which is quite an achievement, are very specific about what is needed. Lansford Hastings has written an account. Joel Palmer has written another. They speak of the journey in tone suggesting it is challenging but manageable, dangerous but surmountable, long but entirely worth it. They make it sound to someone sitting in a Missouri farmhouse in spring with a head full of possibilities, almost reasonable. What the guidebooks do not tell you, what they conspicuously, almost professionally, fail to mention, is what it actually feels like. The weight of noonday air on the Great Plains in July pressing down on the back of your neck like a warm, indifferent hand. The specific quality of exhaustion that settles into the body after 40 days of walking 15 miles with inadequate food. The sound a wagon wheel makes when it finds an underwater rock in the middle of a river crossing. The way you feel at 3 in the morning when you have been sleeping on the ground for 6 weeks and every bone you possess has registered a complaint, and tomorrow is going to be exactly like today. They do not tell you about the dust, they do not tell you about the bacon, they absolutely do not tell you about the hardtack, but you do not know any of that yet. Right now, it all sounds like the beginning of something magnificent. You put down your pen, you look at your wife. She looks back at you with an expression you will never quite be able to describe. Part fear, part excitement, part the particular resolve of someone who has made up their mind and is simply waiting for the words to confirm it. She nods. You nod. It is decided. You begin to pack. Here is your wagon. Take a moment to look at it properly, because you're going to have a very intimate relationship with this vehicle for the next 6 months, in the way that you become intimate with anything that simultaneously carries everything you own and causes you daily structural distress. It is called a prairie schooner. From a distance, from far enough away that the rough wood and iron-banded wheels lose their detail in the haze, the white canvas cover, stretched over curved wooden hoops, does genuinely resemble a sail. And a long wagon train moving across the flat Missouri plain, white canvas tops catching the morning light, does look rather like a fleet of ships setting out across an inland sea. It is a beautiful image. It is also, as metaphors go, fairly accurate, expensive, uncomfortable, and entirely at the mercy of forces that have absolutely no interest in your schedule. Up close, the romance fades a little. Here is a detail the guidebooks mention, and the reality surpasses. The wagon has no springs. This seems like a minor engineering oversight until you have sat in one for 5 minutes on an ungraded trail, and every single vibration from every single irregularity in the ground travels directly and without any mediation into your skeleton. The wagon bounces, the wagon jolts, the wagon finds every rock and rut and root and introduces your spine to each one personally. A person of reasonable fitness sitting in a fully loaded prairie schooner on the Oregon Trail will, within about 2 miles, arrive at the conclusion that walking is not merely preferable, but medically indicated. Everyone walks. This is perhaps the most important single fact about the Oregon Trail that the phrase covered wagon migration manages to obscure. The covered wagon does not carry the people. The covered wagon carries the supplies, the tools, the flour, the bacon, the hardtack, the seeds, the spare wagon parts, and the memories, the sewing box, the school books, the small carved horse and the coat pocket. The people walk beside it 2,000 miles on foot, in the sun and the rain and the dust and the cold, in boots that were made for a human foot in its resting state, and are about to have a very educational conversation with a human foot in its working one. Your prairie schooner measures 4 feet wide and 10 feet long. That is it, 4 feet by 10 feet. Smaller than most modern bathrooms, significantly smaller than many modern closets. And into this modest wooden rectangle, you must pack everything your family needs to survive a 6-month journey across the continent, plus everything you intend to build a new life with at the other end. Into this space, 4 feet by 10 feet. The guidebooks are very specific about the supplies required. 200 pounds of flour, 150 pounds of bacon, 10 pounds of coffee, 20 pounds of sugar, 10 pounds of salt, 50 pounds of lard. Dried beans by the bucketful, rice, hardtack, those dense, flavourless, jaw-testing biscuits that will shortly become your most constant companion and your most complicated relationship. Vinegar against scurvy. A jug of brandy, officially for medicinal purposes, which is technically true, and also a sentence that covers a great deal of ground. Baking soda, cornmeal, dried fruit, tea, then the equipment. Blankets more than you think, because the nights are cold and blankets get wet, and both of these things happen more often than any guidebook admits. Rope, more rope than seems necessary. This is one of the Oregon Trail's universal truths. You will always need more rope, a full set of tools, spare wagon parts, because the trail will require them. A rifle, a medical kit containing camphor, laudanum, castor oil, quinine, and a small medical guide called the Prairie Traveller, which recommends, among other things, turpentine for intestinal complaints and brandy for snake bites. Modern medicine has a number of thoughts about this. The pioneers did not have modern medicine. They had turpentine and brandy, and they did what they could. Pots, pans, a Dutch oven, a coffee grinder, seeds for planting when you arrive, a spare pair of boots, because your current pair is not going to survive 2,000 miles, and it knows it. The recommended total weight of provisions alone is around 1,500 pounds. Your wagon, empty, weighs approximately 1,300. Add the people and you're approaching 4,000 pounds. Most families use oxen. Oxen are preferred over horses not because they are faster. They are not. They are notably, philosophically, almost spiritually slow. But because they are steady, strong, and considerably less inclined toward drama. A horse that encounters something alarming may rear, bolt, or simply stop and refuse to engage with the situation on principle. An ox, confronted with the same alarming thing, will look at it briefly, determine that it is not another ox, and continue walking. This is either deep wisdom or the complete absence of imagination. On the Oregon Trail, the distinction does not matter much. Either way, it keeps the wagon moving. Oxen are also cheaper, and in absolute extremity, they can be eaten, which is a calculation that every family has made privately, and that no family discusses openly. Now, nobody rides in the wagon. This surprises people who have never thought carefully about what riding in an unsprung wooden box on iron-rimmed wheels over completely ungraded terrain for 15 miles actually involves. The answer is, it involves your spine lodging a series of formal complaints that escalate in urgency with every mile. The vibration from the wheels travels directly through the wooden frame into anyone sitting inside with tremendous enthusiasm and absolutely no filter. Within a day, your back has opinions. Within 3 days, every vertebra has joined the conversation. Within a week, the wagon has introduced you to muscles you had no idea you possessed, all of them deeply unimpressed. And so you walk. Everyone walks. You walk beside the wagon or in front of it or behind it, depending on the dust situation, which changes with the wind. You walk through mud that grabs at your boots with the persistence of something that has decided this is personal. You walk through dust so fine it finds its way through closed lips and into your mouth, through squinted eyes onto your eyeballs, through the weave of your clothing onto your skin. By the time you reach Oregon, if you reach Oregon, you'll have walked approximately 2,000 miles. The soles of your boots will have worn through at least twice. A surprising number of pioneers complete significant stretches of the journey barefoot, by which point the trail has recalibrated their standards in several departments. But right now, you are still in Missouri, still packing, and you are discovering something that everyone who has ever attempted to fit their life into a limited space eventually discovers. Your life does not fit. You are ruthless. You are methodical. You made the hard choices. You left the china. You left the grandfather clock that ticked in the hallway every 15 minutes of your entire childhood. You left the heavy oak rocking chair, your father's chair, the one with a particular creak you could identify from across the house, the one you have sat in every evening of your adult life. You left it all because the guidebook was clear, and the oxen have limits and sentiment, however deeply felt, has weight. And then your wife brings out the sewing box her mother gave her on the day she was married. Your eldest daughter appears with 3 school books, worn and annotated, and apparently non-negotiable. Your youngest son is clutching a small carved wooden horse, barely bigger than his fist. It weighs almost nothing, a whisper of weight, and holds it out with the quiet seriousness of small children making requests they know might be difficult. You look at the pile of things that cannot come. You look at your family. The sewing box goes in. 2 of the 3 school books go in. The wooden horse fits in a coat pocket and weighs nothing. And this is not a discussion. On the morning you leave, the neighbours come out. Some shake your hand warmly. Some watch with an expression that sits precisely between admiration and concern. The expression of people watching someone do something brave, while privately wondering whether brave and sensible are always the same thing. One old farmer at the end of the road, who has lived on his land for 40 years and watched the westward emigrants pass with the quiet attention of someone keeping a very long tally, says nothing at all. He just watches the wagon roll past with the look of someone who has thoughts he sees no particular reason to share. You wave anyway. You turn west. The adventure begins. Ready or not, and mostly not. The jumping off towns of Missouri, Independence, St. Joseph, Council Bluffs, are, in the weeks before the wagon trains depart, among the most chaotically alive places in America. Thousands of people have arrived from all directions with the same plan, the same hope, and most of them with roughly the same mixture of determination and inexperience, which is a combination that makes for tremendous energy and occasionally questionable decisions. The streets are clogged with wagons. The air is thick with the smell of animals, oxen, horses, mules, hundreds of them, and wood smoke, and leather, and the particular atmosphere of a great many people who are about to do something very large, and are still in the stage where this feels exciting rather than alarming. That stage will not last, but it is pleasant while it does. The merchants of Independence and St. Joseph are having, it must be acknowledged, an absolutely magnificent spring. They have raised their prices to reflect the unique situation of thousands of customers who are about to leave civilization entirely and are therefore highly motivated to ensure they have everything they need before doing so. Everything is expensive. The merchants sell it all with the serene confidence of people who are the only shop for the next 2,000 miles, which they are. There are experienced trail guides offering their services, their weathered faces and calm eyes communicating competence in a way that commands a premium. There are also men offering their services who have never been further west than the next county, but who have read the guidebooks thoroughly and own very impressive hats. The experienced emigrants can tell the difference. The newcomers often cannot, and discover this later at some inconvenient geographical location. Your wagon joins a train of about 30 families. A wagon master is elected, someone with trail experience, someone whose judgment everyone has agreed in advance to follow, even when they disagree with it. Because the alternative to having a leader everyone follows is having 30 families, each leading separately, which is not a wagon train so much as a very slow argument heading west. Rules are set, duties assigned. There is a general agreement in the optimistic atmosphere of departure. that everyone will cooperate and be excellent neighbours for the duration. This agreement will survive approximately 48 hours before reality begins to offer amendments. But that is tomorrow's problem. Tonight there is a fiddle and a fire, and people dancing who have not danced in months, laughing the specific laugh of people about to do something frightening, who have decided, just for tonight, to lean into the magnificent instead. Tomorrow, at 4 in the morning, the bugle sounds. 4 in the morning, not 5, 4. The wagon master understands that October in the mountains does not move its schedule for anyone, and so neither does he. The cold of 4 in the morning on the Great Plains is not the cosy, pull-the-blanket-up cold of a bedroom in winter. It is the bone-deep cold of air that has been sitting undisturbed over open grassland all night, with no trees or buildings to slow it, and no sympathy to offer. You push out from under your blankets, which you've been sleeping in, on the ground under the wagon, because that is your bed now, the ground welcome, and stand up into the dark. Your breath is visible. The grass is wet with dew. The sky is just beginning to lighten in the east, a thin pale thread above the black horizon. It is technically beautiful. You are not yet in a position to appreciate it. The camp is already moving. It moves every morning with the practiced efficiency of people who have very quickly learned that standing still is not compatible with getting to Oregon before the snow. Fires are lit. Water is fetched. The oxen who have been grazing on a long rope overnight must be located and retrieved. This is nearly always straightforward, and occasionally entirely the opposite. Breakfast is bacon and bread. It will continue to be bacon and bread every day for 6 months. We want you to have that information now, so that nothing that follows comes as a surprise. The bacon sizzles in an iron pan over the open fire, and the smell of it in the cold morning air is genuinely extraordinary. Hot fat and wood smoke, and the ancient smell of a meal being made before the sun comes up. You eat standing, because sitting is for people who have not yet fully committed. You drink your coffee scalding hot, because that is the only temperature at which it remains coffee, rather than a cold reminder of better breakfasts. Then the bugle sounds again, the wagon master makes his assessment, and the train begins to move. Wagons west. The early days of the journey are genuinely wonderful. This is not a trick. The people who lived them said so, consistently, and they were not given to dramatic overstatement. They were Midwestern farmers who described things as they found them, and what they found in those first weeks was this: beautiful. The Missouri spring in late April is soft and green and generous. The trail is clear. The oxen are strong and fresh and pulling well. The wagons are in good repair. The people are energized by the lightness that comes from having made a frightening decision and found so far that it has not killed anyone. The children are, without exception, having the time of their lives. Give a child a prairie and an entire continent of open space, and they will fill it with invention and joy that would exhaust an adult in under 10 minutes. They run races beside the wagons. They catch grasshoppers and then immediately lose interest in grasshoppers and release them. They collect rocks, so many rocks, rocks of every description, rocks that are apparently critical to the project, and bring them to show adults who respond with the carefully calibrated enthusiasm of people who are secretly calculating additional wagon weight. They make friends across wagon boundaries with the ease of children who have not yet learned suspicion, and they disappear into cheerful, roving packs that range across the train like small, entirely unsupervised wildlife. In the evenings, when the wagons have formed their circle and the fires are burning and the supper is cooking, the quality of community around those fires is something that is genuinely hard to replicate in ordinary life. People share food and news and jokes. They help each other with the practical things. A wheel that needs attention, a child with a fever, advice about tomorrow's route. The fiddle comes out. The stars come out. The stars over the open prairie, with no artificial light for 200 miles in any direction, are staggering. An absolute riot of light from horizon to horizon. The Milky Way blazing overhead like the universe spilled something and decided to leave it. You lie on your blanket on the prairie ground, looking up at those stars, and feel very small in the most extraordinary and wonderful way. Notice, though, as you drift off, the particular character of the ground beneath you, the way it does not yield, the way your hip bone finds the single most enthusiastic rock in a 50-foot radius and settles onto it with a commitment that will still be there in the morning. Notice the dew that will be on your blanket by 3 in the morning. Notice the oxen nearby, breathing with the deep satisfaction of animals who have done their work and are now conducting their own quiet negotiations with the night. This is your bed for the next 6 months. You and the ground are going to reach an understanding. The trees disappear. This happens gradually, and then all at once. And then one morning you look around, and there are no trees anywhere on the horizon in any direction, and the world has become something your eyes, trained their entire life on the modest friendly scale of Missouri farmland, are simply not equipped to process without some adjustment period. The Great Plains. There is no adequate preparation for the Great Plains. You can be told they are large. You can be shown maps. You can read accounts from people who have been there, most of whom struggled to describe them adequately and eventually defaulted to very, very big, which is accurate but misses something. None of it prepares you for the actual physical experience of standing in the middle of them, where in every direction the land stretches flat to a horizon, so distant there is nothing anywhere to interrupt it, and the sky is not the familiar sky of a place, with trees and buildings at its edges, but the whole sky, the entire sky, from your feet directly overhead, and all the way down to the ground, on the other side of the world. It can feel, in the first days, less like freedom, and more like vertigo. The grass is magnificent in late spring, tall green, moving in waves in the constant prairie wind, genuinely resembling the surface of a sea, beautiful and repetitive in equal measure. After about 10 days of the same magnificent grass in every direction, you begin to appreciate it slightly less. By day 20, you have made your peace with the grass. By day 30, you and the grass have reached a mutual understanding in which you no longer actively notice each other. The animals are extraordinary, and none more so than the buffalo. Your first buffalo herd stops the entire wagon train. Not by force, nobody gives an order, it simply happens. The first person to see the herd points and says something, and the next person looks and says something, and within 30 seconds the entire train has stopped moving, and everyone is standing beside their wagon with their mouth open. The herd is not hundreds of animals. It is thousands, tens of thousands, possibly. The number is not really a number, it is a mass, a moving continent of dark brown bodies extending from one edge of the visible world to the other, and in both directions, beyond sight. They move with a sound you feel before you hear, a deep rumbling vibration beginning in the soles of the feet, rising through the chest, the sound of thousands of large animals agreeing about direction. The smell reaches you on the wind, long before the nearest animals come into focus. Powerful, alive, emphatic. You stand and watch until the wagon master calls the departure, because there is no time to stand and watch things forever, even extraordinary things, because October has its own schedule and is not consulting yours. The heat arrives with June. On the Great Plains, in summer, the sun climbs into a sky that bleaches from blue to a pale, washed-out white, and presses down from directly overhead with the committed intensity of something that has no shade to compete with, and no mercy in its toolkit. There is nothing between you and the sun except air. The air is hot, the air is also dry. The air is carrying the dust of every wagon and every animal ahead of you in the train, a fine flour-like cloud that coats everything it touches, including your lungs, your eyelashes, the inside of your nose, and most of the food you're about to eat. The dust on the Great Plains is its own phenomenon. It is not the coarse, grittable dust of an unpaved road that can be brushed away with a sleeve. It is fine as talcum powder, fine as flour, fine enough to work through the weave of clothing and settle directly on skin. By mid-afternoon, your face is the same colour as the ground. Your eyelashes are pale. Your hair, touched, releases a small personal cloud. You are, in the most practical sense, becoming one with the landscape. The landscape has no feelings about this. You have several. And your lips, oh, your lips. The combination of dust and dry heat pursues the lips with a dedication that suggests some personal grievance. Within a week on the Great Plains, the moisture has been drawn from them so thoroughly that they crack. Not chap crack, deep, painful, specific cracks that open with every expression, every meal, every time the hot wind touches them, which is continuously. The remedy is wagon axle grease. Please take a moment with that information. The substance that lubricates the wheels of your wagon, a dark thick compound of rendered animal fat and pine tar that smells, if you are being very charitable, of industry, and if you're being straightforward, of something considerably more specific and considerably less pleasant. That is what you apply to your cracked and bleeding lips, because it is what is available, because the Oregon Trail is in this, as in all things, a place where you use what you have and you do not complain about it. Or rather, you complain about it a perfectly normal amount, and then you put the axle grease on your lips and you keep walking. This is the trail's philosophy in miniature. You do what you have to do. The Platte River arrives on the horizon after several weeks of prairie, and there is a genuine, sincere ripple of excitement through the wagon train when someone spots it. That excitement does not survive contact with the actual river. The Platte has been described by everyone who has ever encountered it with a creative consistency that suggests people have been reaching for the right words for some time. One trail guide called it a mile wide and an inch deep. A pioneer woman wrote in her diary that it was too thick to drink and too thin to plough. Both are accurate. The Platte is broad, sometimes nearly a mile across, and shallow in ways that seem almost principled. and it moves with the unhurried confidence of a river that has nowhere important to be and no interest in your timeline. The water is the colour of very uncertain tea. The banks are low and offer nothing in the way of shade, scenery, or any feature that could be described as welcome. It is a river the way a puddle in a car park is a pond. Technically, geographically, spiritually somewhat disappointing. Its one genuine virtue is that it is water. And water, in the context of the Great Plains, in early summer, is everything. You take what you can get. This is another of the trail's recurring lessons. The wagon train follows the Platte for weeks. Hundreds of miles of the same river, the same low banks, the same uncertain tea colour of the water, the same quiet realisation each morning that it is still the Platte, and it will continue to be the Platte for some considerable time. It becomes your lifeline and the least interesting companion imaginable, completely dependable, entirely devoid of personality. Like a very reliable colleague who has nothing to say but is always exactly where they said they would be. You need them. You appreciate them. You would not choose to walk beside them for 6 weeks. And yet, the laundry stop on the Platte is an event greeted by the wagon train with enthusiasm that is, by any objective measure, disproportionate to the activity involved. Washing clothes is not glamorous under any circumstances, and washing clothes in river water with lye soap that removes 2 layers of skin per minute is actively hostile. But it means stopping. Stopping is wonderful. Stopping means you can sit down. After weeks of walking 15 miles a day, the opportunity to sit down while doing a different, unpleasant thing is received as something close to a gift. Clean enough becomes, on the Oregon Trail, the official standard for everything. Not the clean of a world with hot running water. Clean enough, better than before, adequate for the circumstances. It is a standard that turns out to apply to more than laundry. Now, food. We need to have an honest conversation about food on the Oregon Trail, because it is a central topic, and the honesty will be bracing. You packed carefully. You packed well. You have 200 pounds of flour, 150 pounds of bacon, 10 pounds of coffee, and everything else the guidebook specified. It sounds like a great deal of food. It is not a great deal of food. A person walking 15 miles a day in summer heat, doing the additional physical work of camping and cooking and managing large animals and hauling water and pushing wagons out of mud, burns somewhere between 3,500 and 4,500 calories per day. Your rations, carefully apportioned, provide approximately 2,600. Every single day of the journey, you go to bed slightly short. Not starving, the gap is not that wide, but with a persistent background hunger that makes you think about food with an intensity that would have embarrassed you in Missouri. You dream about specific meals, the smell of bread baking, a beef stew that's been going all day, the kind where the gravy has gone thick and dark, a piece of pie, any pie, all pie. The abstract concept of pie is sufficient. You're not making demands. A fresh vegetable. You've not eaten a fresh vegetable in 3 weeks, and your body is quietly and insistently raising the issue. The bacon is everywhere. Bacon at breakfast, bacon in the beans at supper, bacon grease in the cornbread. There is so much bacon that by week 5 you no longer smell it frying. You simply are the bacon. The distinction has become academic. One emigrant woman named Helen Carpenter having reached her limit with this particular feature of trail life, wrote in her diary with the measured patience of someone carefully choosing each word. One does like a change, and about the only change we have. From bread and bacon is bacon and bread. Bacon and bread. Bread and bacon. And on adventurous days, the bacon is slightly more thoroughly cooked than usual. The Oregon Trail, where variety comes in unexpected forms. The hardtack. We have mentioned the hardtack, and we owe it a full accounting. Hardtack is made from flour, water and salt. These ingredients are mixed, shaped into flat biscuits, and baked at high temperature for a very long time, until every molecule of moisture, flavour, and any remaining connection to the concept of enjoyment has been thoroughly driven out. The result keeps for years. This single fact tells you everything you need to know about hardtack's relationship with anything that might be called food in the enthusiastic sense. Eating hardtack dry requires the jaw of someone who takes the project seriously. Soaking it in water or coffee first produces something with approximately the texture of mildly discouraged cement, which is an improvement. The coffee adds flavour. On a cold morning after a cold night on hard ground, hardtack soaked in hot coffee is not nothing. It is warm. It fills the stomach. It keeps you walking. It is just not enjoyable. Not once. Not in 150 days. The coffee, though, is a genuine pleasure and deserves recognition. Trail coffee is made the direct way. Grounds into boiling water, boil hard, let settle, pour carefully. The result is strong and black, and deeply flavoured in a way that the precisely calibrated brews of the modern world rarely match. Part of it is the method. Part of it is the circumstances, cold air, long night, early rising, that make a hot cup of anything feel like an unreasonable gift from the universe. Part of it, though no one on the trail knows this, is that it is quietly saving lives. Boiling the water to make coffee kills the bacteria that cause cholera. The habitual coffee drinkers are surviving at higher rates than those drinking water straight from the river, protected by their morning cup from a disease they do not know exists. The coffee does not know this either. It is just being coffee. It is accidentally heroic, which is the best kind. The fresh meat on the good days is something else entirely. Buffalo, antelope, fish from the rivers. The first piece of fresh buffalo after weeks of salt pork and dried beans produces a reaction in the camp that goes well beyond hunger. Fat sizzling over an open fire, the smell of something genuinely good rising with the smoke. These moments are what the diarists remember most vividly. Not the hardtack. Nobody writes about the hardtack with fondness. The fresh meat on the fire and the sound of people eating it with their eyes closed is what stays. A typical day on the Oregon Trail deserves a full accounting, because the reality of it, the actual hour-by-hour texture of what it meant to be on this journey, is something the grand narrative of westward expansion tends to skip over in favour of the dramatic moments. The bugle at 4 a.m. is not metaphorical. It is a real bugle, sounded by a real person at 4 in the actual morning, every single day for 6 months, including the days when it is raining, and the days when it is cold, and the days when you have been awake since 2 because a child was coughing, and the days when there is no particular reason for it to be difficult other than the fact that it is 4 in the morning and you have been doing this for 63 consecutive days. You get up. This is the decision that the Oregon Trail requires of you every single morning. Not a heroic decision, not a dramatic one. Simply the decision to put your feet on the ground and stand up when everything in your body is making the counter-argument. You make this decision every morning, without ceremony, in the dark, in the cold, and then you make breakfast. The breakfast is bacon and bread. We have established this, we are mentioning it again, because it deserves emphasis. Bacon and bread. Day 1, day 20, day 60, day 110. The bacon sizzles in the pan, and the smell of it rises in the cold morning air, and for the first several weeks this smell is actually quite pleasant. And then for the next several months, it is simply the smell of the morning, and you stop noticing it the way you stop noticing background noise. And by the end, it is simply the smell that means the day is beginning, and there are miles ahead. The coffee, as always, is the saving grace. Hot, strong, immediate. One of the trail's consistent small mercies. By 7, the train is moving. The first hours of walking are the best hours. The air still cool, the dust not yet at full commitment. The oxen pulling well. The children still possessed of the morning's energy, which has not yet been deployed to its fullest extent. The miles in the morning move with something approaching ease. By noon, the wagon master calls the stop, the nooning. An hour, sometimes slightly more, to rest the animals and the people, and eat something and drink water, and do the quiet internal accounting that every person on the trail does at midday. How far today? How far still to go? How are the oxen? How are the children? Is that a blister, or just general foot opinion? What is the state of the water supply? These assessments are made without drama, mostly. They are simply the ongoing management of a situation that requires ongoing management. The afternoon is harder, the sun is high, the shade is theoretical. The dust, having had the entire morning to warm up, is performing at its peak. The oxen slow slightly, as they always do in the heat of the afternoon. The children, who are magnificent at 7 in the morning, have entered a different phase by 2 in the afternoon, one characterized by shorter tempers and stronger opinions about walking. The adults, for their part, are doing the thing that adults on the trail do in the afternoon, which is walking and thinking and walking and not saying much because everything has been said, and walking is what is required, and saying things takes energy that is currently needed for walking. And then the wagon master finds the campsite. The wagons circle, the fires are lit, the supper goes on, beans tonight, or rice, or the perpetual bacon in a new arrangement. The animals are staked, the day's work is done. The fiddle, if the fiddle player has the energy, comes out. The stars, which have no opinion about anyone's energy level and require nothing of anyone, come out regardless. By 9 o'clock, you are asleep. By 9 and 15 seconds, you are profoundly asleep. By 9 and 30 seconds, you are having the kind of deep, restorative, total sleep that belongs only to people who have genuinely used everything they have. The dreams are vivid, the ground is hard, the blanket is slightly damp. At 4 in the morning the bugle sounds. You get up. This is what it is to cross the American continent in the mid-19th century. Not one dramatic moment, not a single defining test. Hundreds of small decisions made every day to get up and keep going. The cumulative weight of all those small decisions pressed into the earth over 6 months and 2,000 miles is what the wagon ruts are made of. That is what you can still see in the Wyoming grass today. Not heroism, just the decision, made every morning to put your feet on the ground. Now, the river crossings. Every person who sets out on the Oregon Trail has read about the river crossings. They know, in the way that you know things you've only read about, that the crossings are dangerous. They have noted the tone that experienced travellers adopt when the subject comes up, a particular careful stillness that says pay attention because this is where things get serious. They know, and then they arrive at their first real crossing, and knowing about something and doing it turn out to be, as is so often the case with difficult things, two entirely different propositions. The simple crossings, shallow, calm, firm-bottomed, are merely uncomfortable. The water comes up to the wagon bed, everything inside gets damp. The oxen walk through with their customary detachment from human concerns. The children find it exciting. You find it manageable. Fine, that was fine. We are fine. The difficult crossings are something else. The rivers on the Oregon Trail, fed by mountain snowmelt, run fast and cold and brown with silt in spring and early summer, and the current is not interested in your carefully planned approach. The riverbed is full of rocks you cannot see, holes that open without warning, soft spots that grab a wheel and do not let go as a matter of principle. The wagons cross one at a time. The first wagon is the bravest and the most instructive. It goes in, the water rises around the wheels, the oxen lean into the harness, and for a moment everything is organised and methodical and almost confidence-inspiring. Then the current finds the wagon, because the current always finds the wagon, and the whole thing lurches sideways in a way that leaves no room for optimism, and the rope teams on shore take the strain, and the oxen surge and the wagon comes through, or it does not. Most come through. The men who wade into the river to guide the wagons encounter the cold with the full force of water fed by mountain snow, which grabs the breath from the lungs, drives the blood from the hands, and makes clear very quickly that it has no interest in the timeline or the feelings of anyone involved. They do it anyway. They wade in and haul and hold and work in shifts because the alternative is to let the current make the decision, and that is not an option. Every successful crossing produces a quality of relief that is entirely out of proportion to the achievement of simply not losing everything you own in a river. But on the Oregon Trail, not losing everything you own in a river is a genuine achievement, and it deserves its moment. You hold your children's hands at every crossing. You hold on. The weather on the Great Plains has, it turns out, strong opinions, and no hesitation about sharing them. Spring brings rain, not the polite, considerate rain of milder places, but full commitment prairie rain, driven by winds that have come from the northwest without meeting anything for 500 miles and have arrived in a decisive mood. A clear sky at noon becomes a wall of dark cloud by 2 in the afternoon. The lightning walks across the plains in long, brilliant strides. The thunder is a continuous rolling concussion, felt in the chest, in the teeth, in the soles of the feet. The rain finds every gap in the wagon canvas and runs through in cold, thin lines onto whatever is beneath. The trail turns to mud. Not ordinary mud, but a specific, adhesive prairie mud that grabs at wheels and hooves and boots with the persistence of something that has taken a professional interest in slowing you down. The wheels sink. The oxen strain. The wagon master watches the calendar with the expression of a man whose arithmetic is not coming out well. On the worst rain days, the train makes 3 miles. 3 miles a person walking at a relaxed pace on a good road could cover that distance in under an hour. The entire wagon train, with all its people and animals and supplies and accumulated determination, takes a full day. And then another day of rain begins. On the days when the rain is too heavy to light a fire, dinner is cold hardtack. You eat it in the wagon, the one time anyone sits in the wagon voluntarily, only because outside is actively worse. Listening to the rain on the canvas, sitting in a space that smells of wet wool, and the closeness of people who have not been entirely dry in several days. You eat your cold hardtack and you think, with more feeling than the subject objectively warrants, about being warm. And then the sun comes back, and the mud dries to dust, and the dust rises, and the sun climbs into the white sky, and by the end of June it is doing things that Missouri summers never attempted, bearing down on the open prairie with the focused commitment of heat that has no shade to worry about and no timetable to keep. The afternoon storms, when they build, are a different category of weather entirely. A clear horizon at 2 o'clock becomes a green-purple wall of cloud by 3. The lightning does things on the open prairie that remind everyone present of exactly how exposed they are, standing in a completely flat landscape with nowhere to shelter and nothing taller nearby except themselves and the wagons, which are wooden. One account describes an entire yoke of oxen struck where they stood in the harness, the wagon behind them untouched, the driver sitting in perfect bewildered health, unable to explain his continued presence among the living. This is the kind of story that circulates through a wagon train and is not forgotten. The storm passes, as these storms always do, with the brisk efficiency of weather that had other places to be. The air afterward is clean and cold and smells of wet sage and something almost electrical. The evening sky turns colours that do not appear in most colour vocabularies. The stars come out, washed to brilliance. You sleep on wet ground under a damp blanket, and it is, inexplicably, one of the better nights. There is a fact about the Oregon Trail that the romantic version of the story consistently declines to lead with. Of all the ways the trail found to kill people, and it was thorough in its catalogue, the most efficient, the most democratic, and the most absolutely merciless was not a river or a mountain or a storm. It was cholera. And cholera did not care how well you had packed or how determined you were, or how badly Oregon needed you to arrive. It found you in the water, and it did what it did. In the 1840s and 1850s, nobody understood cholera. The bacteria, the mechanism of transmission, the simple fact that it lived in contaminated water, all of this knowledge was still decades away. Doctors treated it with camphor, laudanum, and occasionally brandy, none of which addressed the cause because the cause was not yet known. They thought it was bad air. They thought it was cold. They tried turpentine. History has recorded the results. What people knew was the result, and the result was this. A person who was perfectly healthy at breakfast could develop a slight fever before noon. By afternoon, the violent cramps had begun. By evening, the disease had done its work. Healthy at breakfast, gone by evening. 12 hours, sometimes less. The wagon trains moved through campsites where previous parties had stopped, drinking from water sources contaminated by those who came before. And the bacteria moved with the water, and the water was everywhere. Nobody boiled it except for the coffee. Nobody knew to. And so, in one of history's quieter ironies, the habitual coffee drinkers who boiled their water every morning simply because that is how you make coffee, were surviving at higher rates than everyone else, protected by their morning routine from a disease they had never heard of. Coffee, quietly, accidentally, entirely saving lives, while hardtack contributed nothing. During the worst outbreak years, cholera moved through wagon trains with a speed that defied individual accounting. One traveller in 1852 recorded that for 400 miles the road was almost a continuous graveyard. At one campground alone he counted 71 graves. 71 at one campground. Most of those graves have no names on them. There was often no time, no material, no possibility of stopping long enough. The trail required forward movement, and the calendar had no flexibility, and so the mounds are in the earth, and the names are gone, and the next wagon train rolled past without knowing. And this is the part of the Oregon Trail that no guidebook, however optimistic, chose to put on the first page. There was another illness known on the trail by a name that required no medical knowledge to understand: breakbone fever. Dengue in formal terms. Breakbone fever in the terms of people who had experienced it and needed the description to be accurate. The joint pain produced by dengue is so total, so complete in its attention to every joint simultaneously, that those who experienced it said it felt exactly as they imagined it would feel if every bone in their body had been broken at the same time. They were bedridden for days in a wagon that was moving over the roughest terrain on the continent, which added a quality to the experience that one hesitates to dwell on. Most recovered. The trail moved on regardless. You patch what can be patched, you do what can be done, and you keep moving because October has no interest in your medical history and the mountains are still ahead. At roughly the 1/3 mark of the journey, 700 miles from Missouri, which sounds substantial until you remember that substantial and halfway are not the same thing, the trail reaches Fort Laramie. Fort Laramie is not impressive by most standards. It is a trading post and military establishment consisting of several buildings, a low wall, and a small permanent population of soldiers and traders who have developed the particular expression of people who watch an endless stream of exhausted emigrants arrive and already know what the next conversation is going to be. But it has walls. Walls that have been in the same place for more than one night. Walls that do not flap or drip or require restaking in the morning. After 700 miles of sleeping on the open ground under a canvas that has opinions about wind, the walls of Fort Laramie produce a feeling that is entirely out of proportion to what walls objectively deserve to produce. And yet there it is. Fort Laramie is also where the trail presents its reckoning. The wagon is too heavy. It has been too heavy since approximately week 2, when the oxen began showing the first signs of strain and the wagon master began watching them with the expression of someone whose arithmetic is not coming out in anyone's favour. The animals have managed. They are oxen and managing is what they do, and they do it with the stoic indifference of creatures who have decided the world is the world, and they might as well pull it. But managing the prairie and managing the mountain passes ahead are two categorically different requests, and the passes are not going to be sympathetic to the distinction. So at Fort Laramie, strewn along the trail outside the fort in the Wyoming dust, is everything that everyone else has already worked out they cannot carry further. Iron stoves left in their dozens. Iron stoves that someone packed in Missouri on the perfectly logical grounds that they would need to cook on something in Oregon, which is true, and on the somewhat less examined grounds that the oxen would manage, which has now been tested. The stoves sit in the sun in silent testimony to the gap between optimism and the Rocky Mountains. Furniture, books, formal clothing, a feather mattress that has made it 700 miles, which is impressive, and has now reached the end of the journey it is able to take, which is Fort Laramie, and then gloriously the piano. Someone, some family, somewhere in the westward cavalcade, packed a full-sized piano into their wagon in Missouri. They wrapped it, they braced it, they watched it survive 700 miles of prairie, river, and general difficulty, and here, outside Fort Laramie, they did the mathematics that everyone eventually has to do. The piano cannot go. They left the piano. It sat in the Wyoming sun and watched the wagon trains pass and played nothing, because the piano requires hands, and the hands were walking west without it. Somewhere in the Wyoming soil, the iron frame of that piano still exists, the wood long gone, but the metal patient and permanent, the last record of someone's decision about what mattered and what had to be left behind. You look at your own wagon, you calculate, you leave the things the mathematics require. You keep the carved wooden horse. Some calculations do not require mathematics. The wagons move on. West of Fort Laramie, the land begins to rise, slowly, with the dignity of geology that's been doing this for millions of years and finds urgency slightly beneath it. The flat prairie gives way to rolling hills. The rolling hills grow ridgelines. The ridgelines become something on the western horizon that you watch for several days before admitting to yourself that it is not clouds, it is mountains. The Rockies, real, present, and considerably larger than they appeared from Missouri. The approach is gradual enough to be deceptive. For days you barely register the climb, just a slight additional effort from the oxen, a barely perceptible shortness of breath. The air cooling in ways that feel at first like weather, and then slowly, like altitude, and the smell. After weeks of dust and dried grass and the persistent presence of bacon, the first smell of pine and cold and clean mountain air lands on the face like something physical. People stop walking and breathe it in the way you breathe in things you did not realize you had been missing. South Pass, the great crossing of the Continental Divide, is famously anticlimactic in the immediate physical sense. There are no dramatic cliffs, no narrow ledge requiring courage and careful footwork. It is a broad, high plateau, gentle enough to cross with wagons, significant enough to be the backbone of the continent, and first-time crossers often look around and wonder if they have somehow missed the dramatic part. They have not. The dramatic part is the meaning of it. Stand still for a moment and consider. The water at your feet flows east, to the Missouri, to the Mississippi, to the Atlantic Ocean. 20 feet to the west, it flows to the Columbia, to the Pacific. You are standing on the exact line where the Americas split themselves in two. Everything east drains one way, everything west drains the other. You are on the spine of the continent. You are also more than halfway to Oregon. This information is received with the specific quality of relief of people who've been walking for a very long time and needed to hear it. The descent on the western side of the Rockies is where the mountains stop being scenic and become immediate, physical, daily work. The trails down are steep and rocky, and in places require lowering the wagons by rope. Everyone on the lines, boots finding purchase on loose rock. Arms and backs burning, the wagons swaying over the descent with all the graceful confidence of a very large box on a very steep hill. The oxen are led separately, picking their way down with the focused attention of animals that understand exactly what is being asked of them and are trying their considerable best. Your hands by this point are not the hands you had in Missouri. They are calloused in specific places, strong in specific ways, competent with ropes and harnesses and hitches. When the rope bites into the calluses on the descent, you barely notice. You have been barely noticing this particular sensation for long enough that it has become simply part of the texture of a day. The mountain nights are cold in a way that has genuine conviction. Frost on the wagon canvas in the morning, breath visible all day. The children are wearing everything they own simultaneously, which gives them a layered, slightly spherical quality. The fire at night is the centre of everything. Banked high, circled closely, the one point of warmth in a landscape that has decided warmth is a seasonal offering, and the season is not this one. October remains in the background of every calculation the wagon master makes, in every slightly earlier than yesterday morning departure, in every rest stop that is a little shorter than the one before. October is not said aloud mostly, but it is present. Everyone feels it. The mountains are crossed. Of course they're crossed. They have to be. So they are. The Snake River Plain offers the wagon train with the impartial generosity of terrain that does not read journals, a new set of challenges entirely. The Snake River itself is magnificent, deep, fast, cutting through black basalt canyons with the confidence of water that's been doing this for millions of years and has not been waiting for anyone's permission. The cliffs are dramatic. The water is powerful. It is beautiful and severe and offers nothing in the way of softness. The ground of the plain is volcanic, black lava rock in sharp broken fields that have never been weathered into anything resembling welcome. The wagon wheels, which have survived 2,000 miles of varied terrain and have developed opinions about all of it, find the lava a new and specific adversary. The ox hooves on the sharp basalt split and crack and bleed, and the animals slow. The wagon, by this point, looks like something that has survived rather than something that has travelled. The canvas is patched over previous patches. The wood is grey and checked from months of weather. The iron rims have been tightened so many times that the bolts have developed a kind of weary familiarity with the wrench. The whole thing is held together by necessity, habit, and what can only be described as the accumulated stubbornness of everyone involved, including the wagon itself. You stop noticing any of it. You just walk. Something changes in the last 100 miles. Something shifts in the quality of the journey that is hard to name precisely, but entirely impossible to miss. The exhaustion has long since stopped being something you notice and becomes simply the condition of existence, the baseline from which all other calculations are made. Your feet move because they have always moved, and they will continue to move because they have no other instruction. This is no longer heroic or dramatic. It is simply what is happening. But the mountains are smaller behind you now, the way things always become smaller when you've passed them. The forests of the Pacific Northwest are beginning. Douglas fir in towers of living wood 150 feet overhead, their canopies filtering the light into something green and cathedral, and completely unlike anything you've seen in 4 months of open sky. The smell of it, after months of dust and dried grass and river silt, and the omnipresent spirit of bacon, lands on you like something physical. People stop walking to breathe it. The children stop running to breathe it. Oregon's rain, characteristic, constant, unapologetic, falls on faces cracked by months of sun and wind, and it is cold and clean and so welcome that you turn your face up to it and stand there for a moment, just letting it happen. The Columbia River is the last obstacle. Wagons dismantled, floated on rafts, animals driven along the shore. The river takes what it takes, as rivers have always done. But it is the last river. After this, the trail runs south. And then one morning, a morning that begins like every morning. 4 o'clock, cold, dark, the cattle breathing steam, the coffee going on. You come around a low hill, and there it is, the Willamette Valley. Green beyond what the word green usually has to offer. A valley so wide and so fertile and so insistently, extravagantly alive that it looks less like something discovered and more like something promised. Grass thick enough to lose a boot in. Rivers clear enough to see the bottom in 10 feet of water. Trees that have been growing for centuries and intend to continue. And land, free land, your land, 640 acres of it, rolling gently under a sky that is grey and soft, and not the bleached white furnace of a Great Plains summer. You stop the wagon. You stand. The children are beside you. Your wife's hand finds yours. The oxen breathe slowly in their harness, patient and present, as they have been through all of it. You think about the rocking chair, the grandfather clock, the piano at Fort Laramie. You think about the graves along the trail, the marked ones and the unmarked ones, and the names that the earth kept and would not give back. You think about the axle grease on your cracked lips, the hardtack in the rain, the cold nights on the ground and the hot days in the dust and the river crossings and the mountains and the bacon, the eternal, relentless, philosophically committed bacon. And you look at this valley and you think about the man in the general store in Missouri who started all of this with his sun-darkened face and his 2 large stories and his absolute conviction that the land in Oregon was worth every difficulty the distance required. You think about how you sat at the kitchen table with your wife and wrote numbers on a piece of paper, and neither of you slept that night. You think about the neighbours who watched the wagon roll away with expressions you understood completely only now, only from this side of the distance, only with the valley in front of you. You think about the rocking chair, the grandfather clock, the piano at Fort Laramie. You think about the bacon. You think about the hardtack. You think about the axle grease on your cracked lips on the Great Plains in July, and the cold river water up to your chest on the crossings, and the frost on the wagon canvas in the mountains in September, and the man in the 4th wagon with his 3 songs on the harmonica, night after night after night. You think about the graves along the trail, the marked ones and the unmarked ones, the names the earth kept. You think about the coffee, always the coffee, hot and strong and quietly, accidentally heroic. And you look at this valley, this wide, green, improbable, magnificent valley, and you think, yes, worth it, all of it, every single mile, every piece of hardtack, even the bacon, worth it. The communities that formed in the Willamette Valley grew quickly, with the energy of people who have decided what they want, and walked 2,000 miles to prove they meant it. Towns appeared, schools went up, often before the churches, which tells you something direct and admirable about the priorities of people who had brought their children 2,000 miles and were very clear about what the future required. Newspapers were founded. Neighbours who had walked the same trail together built a kind of community that comes only from having been genuinely tested together, which is a different and more durable thing than the kind that comes from simply living in the same place. The Oregon Trail was active for roughly 25 years before the Transcontinental Railroad arrived in 1869 and made the wagon journey largely obsolete, with the brisk efficiency of a technology that has a timetable and does not find walking 2,000 miles a compelling alternative. Families who would have packed wagons instead bought tickets and watched the Great Plains roll past a window, arriving in days rather than months, rested with all their belongings intact, including the piano. In a development that would have baffled the actual pioneers considerably, the Oregon Trail became most familiar to subsequent generations through a computer game, one in which you could name your travelling party after your friends and then spend the next 40 minutes watching them die of dysentery in alphabetical order while attempting to ford rivers and shoot considerably more buffalo than you could carry. The game was played in classrooms across America for decades and introduced millions of children to the Oregon Trail who otherwise might never have thought about it. It was not entirely accurate in its details. It was in the matter of dysentery and difficult river crossings and being unable to carry all the buffalo you shot, broadly correct in spirit. The real trail required rather more than 40 minutes and did not offer a restart button. The Oregon Trail was active for roughly 25 years before the Transcontinental Railroad arrived in 1869 and rendered the wagon journey largely obsolete. With the brisk efficiency of technology that has a timetable and does not find walking 2,000 miles a compelling alternative. Families who would have packed wagons instead bought tickets and watched the Great Plains roll past a window, arriving in days rather than months, rested, with all their belongings intact, including presumably the piano. In a development that would have genuinely baffled the actual pioneers, the Oregon Trail became most familiar to subsequent generations through a computer game, one in which you could name your travelling party after your friends and spend the next 40 minutes watching them die of dysentery in alphabetical order. The game was played in classrooms across America for decades and introduced millions of children to the Oregon Trail who might otherwise have never thought about it. It was not entirely accurate. It was in the matters of dysentery and difficult river crossings and rationing food and the particular frustration of hunting far more buffalo than you could carry back to the wagon, broadly correct in spirit. The real trail required rather more than 40 minutes. It did not offer a restart button. There was no beginning to return to. There was only forward and the next crossing and the calendar, and eventually, for 9 in 10 of those who set out, the valley. Somewhere between 300,000 and 500,000 people made the overland journey in those 25 years. 1 in 10 of them did not make it. Approximately 20,000 people are in the earth between Missouri and Oregon, in the soil of the plains, the banks of the rivers, the slopes of the mountain passes. 20,000 people who had names and families and specific reasons for being on the trail, who set out with the same hope as everyone else, and who met instead the specific and unsentimental kind of ending that the trail was capable of providing. The other 9 in 10 arrived, thin, weathered, and fundamentally changed in ways that took years to fully understand. They arrived and stayed and built. The West that exists today, its towns, its farms, its roads, its communities, traces back, in some essential and irreducible way, to people who packed their lives into wooden boxes and walked. They had no GPS, no weather forecast, no way to call for help. They had oxen and rope and the accumulated stubbornness of people who have made a decision and intend to see it through, even on the days when the only available meal is cold hardtack in a rain-soaked wagon, and the only available entertainment is a man in the 4th wagon playing the same 3 songs on his harmonica. They walked 2,000 miles. They crossed a continent. They found the valley. Of course they found the valley. Finding the valley was the easy part. The wagon ruts are still there, in Wyoming and Nebraska and Kansas, in the places where the soil was soft enough to keep the record. 2 parallel lines, pressed by hundreds of thousands of wagon wheels, are still visible in the grass. The earth remembered the weight. 170 years of seasons have not persuaded it to forget. You can stand beside those ruts today on a clear day, with the prairie wind moving through the same grass, and look west along the same line that 500,000 people followed, and feel something that is not quite nostalgia, because you were never there, but is related to it. A respect, a recognition of what was pressed into the earth and what it cost. The night sky on the Great Plains was, by the consistent testimony of everyone who ever crossed them, the one thing that required no complaint. Every diary, every letter, every account written by every kind of person mentions it, with the same quality of language, the same reaching for words bigger than the ones available. There are no cities on the Great Plains in 1848, no artificial light of any kind for 200 miles in any direction beyond the campfires. And into that complete countrywide darkness, the stars arrive. The Milky Way over the Great Plains is not the faint smudge visible from the edge of a modern city on a good night. It is a structure, a visible 3-dimensional band of light arching from horizon to horizon, with clouds and rifts and individual stars scattered across it with what looks, in the very dark, like deliberate intention. On the darkest nights, it casts shadows. It is not something you glance at. It is something you stop for. The emigrants wrote about it with a helpless reverence. Men who described the daily business of the trail in plain practical language, miles, oxen, wheels, weather, shifted register entirely when they came to the night sky. They wrote about it the way people write about things they want to fix permanently in memory, because they know they will want to return to them. One woman, 6 weeks into the trail, cracked lips, aching feet, 42 consecutive days of bacon behind her, lay on the hard prairie ground and looked up at the stars and wrote that she had never felt so small, and that small had never felt so good, that the sky was so large it made all her worries the correct size. The trail gave this freely and without charge to everyone who crossed it. The hardtack you could resent with considerable feeling. The bacon you could develop a complicated relationship with. The dust you could curse with genuine creativity. But the sky at night over the Great Plains belonged to everyone equally and cost nothing, and was, by universal agreement, magnificent. It is easy, looking back at the Oregon Trail from the comfortable distance of history, to imagine the emigrants as a single unified type, the pioneer, capital P, rugged, interchangeable, more symbol than person. The history books do this, the paintings do this, the computer game, to its credit, at least let you name them after your friends. But spend time with the actual diaries, the real ones, written at night by firelight with a stub of pencil on paper slightly gritty from the day's dust. And what emerges is something far more interesting than a symbol. What emerges is people. Specific, complicated, funny, frightened, petty, generous, exhausted, deeply human people, each one of them carrying a particular interior world into the wilderness. There is the woman, and it is usually a woman because women kept the diaries with greater consistency than the men, who were occupied with the physical management of the enterprise and apparently found less time for reflection, who records the daily indignities of the trail with a dry, precise wit that would be admirable in any century. She notes the bacon with the tone of someone who has made her peace with a permanent injustice, and would appreciate it if the injustice would at least acknowledge that she noticed. She records the mud, the broken wheel, the river crossing, all in the same even prose, with occasional flashes of dark humour that remind you that people have always understood that the appropriate response to sustained difficulty is eventually to find it quietly funny. There is the farmer from Ohio who has never been 50 miles from his birthplace and writes in his diary on his first evening on the Great Plains that he has never in his life seen anything so large, and he is not yet entirely certain how he feels about it. He keeps writing every day of the journey. By the end, the large thing that alarmed him has become the familiar landscape he navigates with competence and, occasionally, something approaching affection. And you can watch the transformation happen across 6 months of daily entries. The fear becoming experience, the experience becoming confidence, the confidence becoming something that does not quite have a name, but that shows in every line he writes. There is the child, several children in several diaries, who describes the prairie dogs with a careful enthusiasm of a young naturalist, who fills pages with accounts of interesting rocks and large birds, and the occasion they saw a bear at a distance, and the wagon master said, "Do not stop, do not look, keep moving," and they looked anyway, because of course they did. The child's voice in the trail diaries is one of the most striking things about them. The same journey that is wearing the adults down registers to a child as an adventure of staggering and apparently inexhaustible richness. Different ages, genuinely different worlds. There are people who fell in love on the trail, meeting at the jumping off towns or finding each other in the long months of enforced proximity that the wagon train created, and who married at Fort Laramie with the entire wagon train as witnesses and a shared meal of bacon and beans as the wedding feast. There are babies born in wagons, delivered by the women of the train, with whatever collective medical knowledge was available named for rivers or mountains or the day of the week, because sometimes you need to name a person right now, and the poetry can come later. There are people who went west with nothing, who had lost everything in the east through illness or debt, or the simple indifference of economic systems to individual circumstances, and for whom the free land in Oregon was not ambition but survival, a second chance. These people walk with a different quality of determination than the farmers seeking more land or the young men seeking adventure. They walk with the specific resolution of people for whom there is nothing behind them and everything ahead and no middle option. And there are people who turned back. This is rarely discussed, but it happened. Somewhere in the first weeks, while the calculation was still possible, some families stopped and looked at what was ahead, and looked at what was behind, and made the other decision. They turned their wagons east. They returned to what they knew. They are not the heroes of this story, but they are part of it, and the decision they made required its own particular courage. The courage of saying out loud that what seemed possible from Missouri does not look possible from the Platte, and that this is information worth acting on. The ones who kept going had already made a different calculation. The point of no return on the Oregon Trail is not marked on any map. It is a moment inside a person when the distance behind becomes larger than the distance ahead in the only accounting that matters, and forward becomes the only direction that makes sense. Most of them reach that moment somewhere in the first month. After that, they walked, one foot in front of the other, all the way to the valley. There is something the history books consistently overlook in favour of the dramatic material, and that is the specific, daily, grinding tedium of the trail. Most days are not river crossings or buffalo herds or cholera outbreaks. Most days are 15 miles of walking across ground that looks exactly like yesterday's ground, in boots that fit slightly worse than last week, eating food that is identical to what you ate yesterday, with the same people you have been walking beside for 6 weeks, who are also tired and also boot sore, and who have also eaten the same food. The tedium accumulates. It grinds at people in ways that the dramatic dangers do not, because at least a dramatic danger requires full attention. The tedium just sits there, day after day, asking nothing of you except the willingness to continue. People respond differently. Some turn quietly inward, going somewhere inside themselves that the trail cannot reach. Some turn loudly outward, filling the silence with talk and jokes and the specific forced cheerfulness of people who understand that morale is a finite resource that must be actively maintained. Like water in the barrels, some develop strong opinions about other people's wagon spacing that they would not have predicted having 6 weeks ago and cannot entirely account for now. The man in the fourth wagon has been playing the same 3 songs on his harmonica every evening since Kansas. He means well. He is not going to stop. The wagon train has made its peace with this. Some members of the wagon train have made more peace with it than others, and yet the wagon trains hold together. They have to, because falling apart alone on the prairie is considerably worse than holding together with people whose harmonica repertoire you now know entirely by heart. They hold together because somewhere in the friction and the tedium there are also the moments that the history books do not write down. The neighbour who appears quietly with extra firewood when your fire is struggling. The woman who sits with your sick child for 2 hours without being asked so that you can sleep. The moment the whole train stops for a buffalo herd and everyone stands together in the same awed, grateful, wordless silence, community is built in the small things, in the rope lent and the food shared and the walking, always the walking, side by side, mile after mile, all the way to the valley. The nights on the trail are their own separate world. You're asleep by 9 o'clock most evenings, not by choice but by the simple mathematics of a body that has walked 15 miles and cooked and managed and loaded and hauled and has nothing remaining to offer the day. Sleep comes not as a gradual drift but as a sudden edge you go over without ceremony, and the dreams that follow are vivid and specific. The farmhouse in Missouri, meals that no longer exist, faces growing slowly more distant. You wake in the dark, hear the oxen and the fire and the wind, remember exactly where you are, and go over the edge again. The guard shifts interrupt this for the men. 2 hours watching, 2 hours sleeping, 2 hours watching. The time in the dying firelight at the edge of the enormous prairie dark, with the camp asleep and the stars overhead, and the darkness physical in its completeness. Those hours are among the strangest of the whole journey. The questions come up then, the ones that stay quiet during the busy day. Is this the right decision? What is happening at home right now, in the house I left? What is waiting on the other side of all of this? The questions do not require answers. They require only being sat with, in the dark, with the oxen breathing nearby, and the continent enormous, and the coffee, fortunately, on at 5 in the morning. The medicine on the Oregon Trail deserves acknowledgement, partly for what it got right, and partly for what it got enthusiastically wrong. The prairie traveller, the medical guide, recommends camphor for cholera, which does nothing. Laudanum for pain, which is opium, and works for that. Quinine for fever, which actually works and is the guide's most reliable contribution. Turpentine for intestinal complaints. Modern medicine finds this recommendation bracing. The pioneers had turpentine, and they used it, and we will leave the details there out of respect for everyone involved. The women of the wagon train carry most of the practical knowledge, not because medicine was their specialty. Formal medical training in 1850 was almost entirely male, but because the daily practice of keeping people alive had always been theirs. They know willow bark tea for fever. They know how to bind a wound, manage a difficult night, coax a sick child back from something frightening. They cannot cure cholera. Nobody in 1850 can cure cholera. But they can sit with the sick and make the difficult hours less alone. And that is a great deal more than nothing. And the trail knows it, even if the history books sometimes forget. Babies are born on the trail. The wagon master calls a halt. The women gather. Everyone waits. The baby arrives and is named, often for something nearby, a river, or a landmark, or the day of the week, because sometimes you need to name something immediately, and poetry is a luxury for later. The wagon train exhales and moves on. The child born on the Oregon Trail arrives into a story already in motion and becomes part of it immediately, carried west in arms that are tired but not too tired for this, toward land their parents walked 2,000 miles to find. That child is the whole point really, when you look at it from the right angle. That child is why. And there is a kind of person the Oregon Trail makes, and it is worth describing. Not the capital P pioneer of the textbooks, rugged and symbolic and interchangeable. The actual person, the specific individual who has walked 2,000 miles and arrived somewhere and built something and knows things they did not know before, the kind of things that can only be learned by doing them. They know the difference between genuine hardship and inconvenience because they have experienced both and can never confuse them again. They know what they need and what they merely want because the trail made that distinction very clear very early and kept making it all the way to Fort Laramie and beyond. They know what other people are worth in difficult circumstances because they have seen it demonstrated. They know that when someone hands them a cup of hot coffee on a cold morning, that is not a small thing. It is, in fact, quite a large thing. They have stood in the dark under more stars than they previously knew existed and understood, in their bones, how large the world is and how small they are in it, and found that this smallness is clarifying rather than frightening. They are the people who built the American West, not symbols. Tired, funny, hungry, frightened, stubborn, ordinary, extraordinary people who got up every morning when the bugle sounded, ate their bacon, always the bacon, hitched their oxen and walked, 1 foot in front of the other, 15 miles a day, all the way to the valley. And they wrote letters home about it afterward, which described the sunsets and the green of the valley and the quality of the soil, and were notably concise on the subject of the axle grease and the hardtack, because some things you do not need to explain in detail, and some things the people at home simply would not believe, and some things are better left as the private property of the people who lived them. The Oregon Trail, for all its misery and danger and hardship and bacon, was also a sustained education in things that cannot be learned anywhere else and cannot be taught by anyone who has not done them. It taught the difference between what you need and what you merely want. This lesson arrived at Fort Laramie in the form of abandoned iron stoves and pianos, and it was reinforced every day thereafter. The things that seemed essential in Missouri, the extra blankets, the formal clothes, the second cooking pot, the mahogany writing desk, revealed themselves, under the weight of actual necessity, to be things that were merely nice to have. The things that turned out to be essential were simpler and fewer. The tools, the seeds, the rope, the coffee, the people. People who had walked 2,000 miles arrived in Oregon carrying considerably less than they'd left Missouri with, and discovered, often to their genuine surprise, that they had enough. That enough, properly understood, was more than they had previously given it credit for. It taught the specific, irreplaceable value of other people in difficult circumstances. Not people in general, the abstract concept of people, but these particular people, the ones who waded into the cold river on your behalf and split their last dried fruit with your children and sat with your sick child through the night without being asked. The wagon train was not a community of people who chose each other. It was a community of people who happened to be heading in the same direction at the same time, and who discovered, over 6 months of proximity and shared difficulty, that they needed each other in ways that the settled, comfortable life of Missouri had never made obvious. This kind of knowledge, once acquired, does not leave. It taught finally, and perhaps most permanently, the actual size of the world. The emigrants who left Missouri were people of a particular scale. Their world was the size of their farm, their county, the distance their feet had carried them. The Oregon Trail expanded that scale without asking permission. The plains that go on past the edge of comprehension, the sky that covers the whole continent, the mountains that do not adjust their schedule for anyone, the rivers that take what they take. It was not a comfortable lesson, but the people who received it and survived it and built their lives on the other side of it were, by the consistent testimony of everyone who knew them, different for it. Not diminished, not broken, more accurately calibrated to the actual size of things. They knew what they were capable of, because they had been shown. They knew what the world was like, because they had walked across it. They knew what mattered, because they had left everything else at Fort Laramie and kept walking and arrived anyway. There is a particular kind of person that 2,000 miles on foot produces, and it is worth describing one more time before we let the trail go quiet. Not the capital P pioneer of the paintings and the textbooks, the actual person, the specific individual shaped by the specific experience of having done this particular and extraordinary and deeply unglamorous thing. They know the difference between genuine hardship and inconvenience because they have experienced both and can never confuse them again. They know what they need and what they merely want because the trail made this distinction very clear, repeatedly, without apology. They know what other people are worth in the moments that count because they have seen it demonstrated under the conditions that reveal it most clearly. They have stood in the dark under more stars than they previously knew existed and understood, in their bones rather than their heads, both how large the world is and how small they are within it, and found that this smallness was clarifying rather than frightening, that a person can be very small and still be entirely sufficient for the thing required of them. That small, as one emigrant woman wrote from the hard prairie ground, with her cracked lips and her bacon-wearied soul, and her clear, tired eyes on the Milky Way overhead, small had never felt so good. They walked 2,000 miles. They built the American West. And then, because they were people rather than legends, they wrote home about it and described mostly the sunsets and the green of the valley and the quality of the soil, and were somewhat brief on the subject of the axle grease and the hardtack, because some things the people at home would not believe, and some things are better kept as the private property of the people who lived them. And so we come, at last, to the end of the road. You are warm, you are still. Your body has been perfectly still for some time now, and the weight of it against your mattress is a comfortable, settled weight. The weight of a body that has been walking for a very long time and has finally gratefully, completely stopped. The trail is behind you. All 2,000 miles of it laid out in the dark, receding slowly like landscape seen from the back of a moving wagon. The Platte River. Flat and wide and dependable and still, it must be said, the least interesting river in North America, but reliable, always reliable. The dust, the bacon, oh the bacon, faithful companion, ever-present participant. The food that was there every morning and will be there in memory for years afterward, whether invited or not. The stars over the Great Plains, blazing and enormous, and entirely indifferent to the difficulties of the people sleeping beneath them, which somehow made them more beautiful rather than less, Fort Laramie and the piano, and the calculation that everyone eventually has to make about what matters enough to carry and what has to be left. In the Wyoming dust, the mountains crossed, the forests of Douglas fir entered with lungs that had forgotten what clean cold air smelled like. The valley found, all of it behind you now, growing softer and further in the way that everything grows softer and further when sleep is close and the body is heavy and the day is fully, completely done. Think of the pioneers who walked this trail. Not the symbolic ones, not the capital P pioneers of the paintings and the textbooks, but the actual ones. The woman writing in her diary by candlelight about the harmonica player in the fourth wagon and the bacon and the stars. The farmer from Ohio seeing the Great Plains for the first time and not quite knowing what to do with the size of them. The children collecting rocks and catching grasshoppers and running races beside the oxen that they won every single time, and that never stopped being satisfying. The man who left his piano in Wyoming and kept walking. The woman who boiled her coffee every morning and saved her own life without knowing it. The families who crossed the rivers holding their children's hands. The wagon trains that held together not because they had to, though they did, but because somewhere in the daily friction and the shared hardship, they had become something to each other that they had not expected to become. These people walked 2,000 miles. They ate hardtack in the rain and put axle grease on their cracked lips and hauled wagons up mountain passes by rope and slept on the hard ground under the most spectacular sky in the world, and got up every morning at 4 when the bugle sounded and did it all again. They deserved the sleep they found at the end of it, every night of it, every deep, earned, exhausted night. You have earned your night too, however you got here, whatever trail you have been walking, whatever weight you have been carrying today, whatever distance lies between you and wherever you're trying to get. You are here now. You made it to this moment. You are warm and still, and the day is over, and there is nothing left to do tonight except exactly this. Rest. Let the breath slow. Let it find its own quiet rhythm, the one the body knows without being told. Let the thoughts lose their edges and their urgency and become soft and distant, the way the prairie becomes soft and distant when you have walked past it and it is behind you, growing smaller, growing quieter, already becoming memory. The trail is long, the trail is always long, but you do not have to walk it tonight. Tonight you rest. The fire is low, the stars are out, the wagon is still. Sleep now, sleep well. You have come a long, long way.